All right, today we are going to be talking about multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. The past couple days we've been talking about adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers. Today we're talking about multiplying them, and there's one idea that's very different from what we've been talking about the past couple days. Let's go ahead and read together this idea that we need to know when multiplying. Go ahead.
You do not need to find a common denominator when multiplying or dividing fractions.
All right, so the difference is here. You do not need to find a common denominator. We have trained ourselves to thinking we must have a common denominator. When we're multiplying and we're dividing, this is very different. You do not need a common denominator. Okay, so here we are. We're going to find the product. Here's the difference. Once again, you don't need a common denominator, so what we're going to do is we will multiply our two numerators together. Guys, what's 1 times 3? 3. Okay, then we're going to do the same idea. We will multiply our denominators together. What's 5 times 8? 40. Can 3/40ths be reduced? No, that is the simplest state, so your answer is 3/40ths. And that's all you have to do. All right, let's go ahead and go across the top. Guys, what's 3 times 3? 9. Remember, all we're doing is just multiplying that numerator together. And what's 4 times 9? 36. Can that be any more simple or reduced?
1/4.
Okay. We know right here it's divided by 9 on top and divided by 9 on bottom. You do not have to show that work. If you know how to do it in your head, you can just do it right there, okay? And 1/4 is the answer. Okay, so the one thing that looks a little different on this one, it says 3/5 times 200. What's different about the number 200 versus what we've had before? It's not a fraction. How would I make that a fraction?
Put a 1 under it.
Okay, all you have to do is put a 1 under it because 200 is the same thing as 200 over 1. When multiplying fractions, you need them both to be a fraction. How many of you guys have heard about cross-reducing before? This is what the deal is. You can cross-reduce things that are diagonal of each other, okay? Look at a 5 and a 200. Can a 5 have anything that goes into it that can also go into a 200? Yes, what can? A 5. A 40 does not fit into a 5. A 5 can fit into a 5, and a 5 can fit into a 200. So, I want you to actually take your red pens just so for our notes, this makes sense. How many times does a 5 go into a 5? 1 time. How many times does a 5 go into a 200? 40 times. So simply what you did right there, you reduced it, and you do not reduce right here when it's on top of each other, but you reduce right here when they are diagonal from each other. Okay, so you can do this when you're multiplying or dividing a fraction. Now let's go ahead and multiply the numerators together. What is 3 times 40? 120. And what's 1 times 1?
1.
Okay, now, is that in the simplest form? No. What does 120 over 1 mean? 120. So for your final answer, I do want you to let me know it's always in simplest form. So if it ever has a number 1 underneath it, always go ahead and switch that up for me. Okay? Any questions on number 3? 12 times 3/8. What's the first thing I've got to do?
You do
Turn 12 into a fraction.
Turn 12 into a fraction, which is 12 over 1, because 12 divided by 1 is the same thing as the number 12, okay? Alex, is there anything here that I can cross-reduce?
Yes.
Yes, which ones?
12 and 8.
12 and 8. What number goes into a 12 that also goes into an 8?
What? 4.
A 4. A 4 is the biggest one. I heard 2. 2 can go in there, but a 4 is bigger, so you want to go with a 4. How many times can a 4 go into a 12, Alex? 3 times. How about the 8? 2 times. Help me out, JD. What do I do next?
You multiply your numerators and then your denominators.
And what do you get?
9 over 2.
Okay, 9 over 2.
Mixed numbers.
All right, so he told me I'm not allowed to keep something there as an improper fraction, ever, okay? So let's turn it into a mixed number. JD, what do you get when you do that? 4 and 1/2, okay? Now, once again, he did that in his head because he knows that 2 goes into a 9 4 times with the remainder of 1. If you cannot do that in your head, it is perfectly fine with me if you want to work it out underneath. You will get the same exact answer, 4 1/2, and that's what we got up there. So these are two ideas that you want to remember each time when we're multiplying or dividing fractions. The first one is you cannot multiply mixed numbers. What do you have to do with it first? Okay, you always have to turn it into an improper fraction first. Next up, if it starts as a mixed number, the final answer has to be a what? A mixed number. So just make sure, once again, you turn that improper fraction back into a mixed number. So numbers 5 and 6 look different than the first 4 that we did because these ones are now mixed numbers. But if you remember, you cannot multiply together a mixed number. Instead, what you need to do is turn it into a what? Improper fraction. Katie, what would 5 and a fourth be?
5 and 1/4 would be 21 over 4.
21 fourths multiplied by what, Michael? 14 thirds is correct. Now we want to check to see, is there any way that I can cross-reduce these? Okay, so we're looking at this right here. Is there anything that goes into a 4 that can go into a 14?
Yes.
Yes, what number? A 2. How many times can a 2 go into a 4? 2 times. How many times can a 2 go into a 14? 7 times. Now let's go ahead and look at these ones. Remember, it's only if it's diagonal from each other. Is there a number that can go into a 3 and a 21? The number 3. Okay, Landon, how many times can a 3 go into a 3? 1 times. And how many times can it go into a 27? Sorry, 21. 7 times is correct, okay? So now we can multiply it out like normal. Carlos, what's 7 times 7?
7 times 7 is 49.
49 over what, Carlos?
2.
Over a 2. Am I finished? No. Kylo, what's wrong with it? Okay, the numerator is larger than the denominator. What do we call that, guys? It's an improper fraction, okay? So if you know how to do it in your head, go ahead and do it in your head. If you don't know how, it's fine for you to go ahead and work it out right there below. Okay, we know a 2 can go into a 4 2 times. How many times can it go into a 9? 4 times. And what's my remainder?
24 and 1/2.
Okay, 24 and 1/2 is the final answer. Now remember, if you're ever going back and trying to double check this, 24 times 2 is 48, and then you add that 1, which would be 49 over 2. Okay, so that's how you can tell that you got the correct answer. Number 6 is very similar to number 5. So the first thing I have to do is what, Jakari? Turn it into an improper fraction. What would 2 and 3/4 be? 11 over 4. Isabel, what would the other one be?
19 over 6.
19 over 6. Okay, as we're looking at this, can these two cross-reduce at all? No. Can these two cross-reduce? No. That just means I'm going to have a little bit of a bigger number. So looking at that first one, what is 11 times 19? 209. What is 4 times 6? 24. All right, now we don't really know our 24 times tables, so we might need to go ahead and do a little bit of division right here. We know that it can go into it 8 times. When you subtract that, what's your remainder?
8.
I don't want it as a decimal.
107. 8.
Okay, 10 minus 9 is 1. 8 and 17 24ths is your answer. So that is the main idea of how we're doing multiplying, but now I want to do a little bit of review, okay? We're going to talk about adding and subtracting mixed numbers just like we talked about yesterday. So as a reminder, whenever we're doing adding or subtracting, I want it to be one number on top of the other so that I can see your work. Do I need a common denominator for these ones?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you do, okay? What would the common denominator be?
18.
18. So make sure you've got an 18 for both of them. JD, how do I get from a 6 to an 18?
Multiply it by 3, we get 15.
You are correct. 15 18ths. All right, let's go to the next one. How do I get from a 9 to an 18, Gabby? Multiply times 2 is correct. And what do you get? 2 over 18. Okay, so now we're going to be adding these together. Carlos, 15 18ths plus 2 18ths. 17 18ths. Am I done? No, what do I have to do?
You have to add the 7 plus 3.
All right, a lot of times people forget about their whole numbers over there. Don't forget your whole numbers. What's 7 plus 3?
10.
10. So what's the answer? 10 and 17/18ths, okay? Please make sure this is in your notes the same exact way. I want to see the common denominator just like that, okay? Let's go to the next one, 9 1/3. Once again, you want to put one number right on top of the other one, minus 7 4/9. Help me out. Emma, what would my common denominator be? 9. Asia, what number do I need to multiply by to get that 1/3 turned into a 9th? Times 3, and what do you get? 3/9 is correct, okay? So here we go now. Fractions first every time. 3/9 minus 4/9. What do I do?
You can't do it.
You cannot do it, so what do I have to do?
You have to change, you have to take away 1 from the 9.
Take away 1 from the 9. Now, remember, I want some ninths. I do not want a whole number. How many ninths equals a whole number?
9.
9 ninths, all right? So just remember up here, 9 ninths equals 1 whole, all right? So just imagine that you have something here and it's split into 9 pieces. So let's just say that's a big pan of brownies and it's split into 9 different pieces. If I want that whole thing, I am going to have all 9 pieces. So 9 ninths means 1 whole. So when I borrow from this guy right here, that simply means that I am adding 9 ninths to this right here, okay? So once again, my whole number we know has now been turned into an 8. And what is 3/9 plus 9 ninths? 12 ninths. So now we also have to remember this down here. We are subtracting 7 4/9. What is 12/9 minus 4/9? 8/9. And what's 8 minus 7? Can that be reduced at all? No. So your final answer is 1 and 8/9. When I'm adding and subtracting fractions, do I have to have a common denominator? Yes, you do. Okay, when you're multiplying, dividing, you don't. When you're adding or subtracting, you do. What would a good common denominator be for these? A 12. So now we just have to figure out how do I get from this 2/3 right here and turn it into an equivalent fraction with 12 as the denominator. Carlos, what should I multiply by?
4.
Times 4, what do you get?
8.
8/12 is correct. Okay, next one, Landon, what should I do?
7 times 4 is 12.
Okay, so you got to multiply it by 3, and what would the top numerator be? 9/12. Next up, Michael, what should I do to get from 2/6 to 12ths?
You multiply 6 times 2, and then 2 times 2.
And what do you get?
And you get 4/12.
4/12, okay? So let's look at this first part first. 8/12 plus 9/12 equals what?
17.
17/12. Then you're going to take 17/12 and subtract 4/12. What do you get?
13 over 12.
13/12. Okay, am I finished?
No.
Why not?
Because you have to do 12 into 13.
All right, so what's your final answer? 1 and 1/12. Remember, you do not have to show me work unless you don't know how to do it. Then you can sit there and always do and show your work like that if you want to, but you do not have to. Okay? All right, so that's what you need to know. Just a little review about adding and subtracting, but also about multiplying.